Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we'll make a start. My name is Councillor Tom Bennett. I am one of the Vice Chairman of the Planning Applications Committee, and I'm chairing this evening's meeting. To my right, my fellow councillors, and it's the five of us who will be making the decisions this evening. If they could just quickly introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Mackover. Also a good opportunity to test the technology, yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's coming up.
Okay, Councillor Mackover, Planning Committee and Planning Applications Committee member.
Councillor Sonia Zvagniuk, Chelsea Riverside Ward.
Councillor Mohammed Bakhtiar, Colville Ward, a Planning Committee member.
Councillor Ariti of Holland Ward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to my left is the officer team who will be presenting tonight's cases and advising us on various issues. And the officer team is led tonight by Fiona Ray. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We don't have any apologies, and we have a full house on the committee this evening. Second item is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest or other declarations from members? No? The third item is minutes of previous meeting. I don't believe we have any minutes of the previous meeting on this occasion, do we? No. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through the running order for this evening. So the first question to ask is, I'm hoping the answer is no. Do we have anyone here for 23 Camden Hill Square or for the Farmers Market at Fox Primary School? No, that is good news because both of those cases have been deferred. So it looks like those messages got through to all the people planning to attend on that. So the running order for tonight was starting with number 8, Queensdale Walk. Then we have 15B, Stratford Road. Then we have 2, Holbein Place. Then Dovehouse Green on Kings Road. Then 503 Kings Road, 15 Gloucester Road, Whitstable House on Silchester Road, Dixon House on Darfield Way, Frinstead House on Freston Road, the ground floor at 18 and 20 Stratford Road. Then we have 18 Milner Street, 18 Kelso Place, and then finally number 61 Edith Grove. So quite a few cases to get through this evening. Some of you will have attended these meetings before, some of you might not have, so very quickly, just in terms of the process of each case, the officer will present the case. We'll then have an opportunity for both the objectors and the applicants, if they're represented here tonight, to have 3 minutes each to make their relevant cases. We'll then have a sort of Q&A session where members of the committee will ask questions and the objectors or applicants will be able to answer those questions. When that section of the meeting of the case finishes and we proceed to questions for officers, that is a sort of one-way street. We can't then go back and re-engage with either applicants or objectors. Even if, you know, there are times where it might be very useful on a point of fact, but we legally can't do it. So at that point, we have to stop interacting with you. We have questions to officers, and then following that, we make a decision on the case. So that's the process we take for each one. Right, therefore, let's proceed to the first case, which is number 8, Queensdale Walk.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be presenting this case this evening. I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. Some additional representations were received. This application is seeking permission to vary condition 2 of previously granted scheme. Condition 2 refers to previously approved plans. This current application is seeking permission to remove a render brick patches and beam at the front elevation and replace it with the new brickwork. The original permission was granted for internal alterations, demolition works, various extensions, including basement, ground and first floor extensions, works to a roof and the garden studio. So I just run through some of the slides for you. So we've got the site location plan with the property outlined in red. We've got a photograph of the streetscape before the construction commenced on site. The red arrow points towards the application site. You can see the brickworks on the ground floor that are proposed to be removed, and this beam over here. I would also like to draw your attention to number 6, which you can see a similar beam design over there. This is the photos of the front elevation prior to works on site. Again, the demolition is proposed over here with where is the outline in green. This is the photograph of the property from inside. This is the beam we are discussing this evening. Demolition of plans of the front elevation. Members can see the in red is the already approved demolition works on site. The additional elements are marked in green and blue. The blue shows the beam and the green is the patched render brickworks. Demolition plans of the ground floor. Again, all the annotation in red's already been permitted in terms of its demolition, just the additional green and blue elements. We've got the demolition section AA. This is the beam at the front with the render brickwork. Demolition section B, again, beam and the brickwork. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, for objectors, I have Rachel Palmer registered to speak. Are you with us this evening? Yep. Yes, hello. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
The original external steel and wood hayloft beam for this workplace, converted later to a house in World War II, dates to early days of steel production. It connects closely with local history, and while this might not seem important to planning officers, for nearly 200 years it had a significant value for the local community, and that needs some respect. You have seen on the drawings that it is an external beam, working beam, and there has been a lot of misunderstanding that it was an internal beam. It is structural and external. Certainly a brick replacement for it is wrong. Permission for a new beamless facade would not have been allowable in this conservation area had the prominent beam not been omitted from drawings or airbrush from them. It was notably omitted from the approved facade drawing when 46 locals voted against this and other matters. Like other homes in the walk with similar beams at 6 and 11, one was up there, it would and should have been conserved and protected long ago. The beam may need repairs in the original style, but it needs to remain for community conservation and historic reasons. On conservation, number 8 is named as an asset to the Norland Conservation Area. Its facade should improve and enhance rather than downgrade the walk and conservation area, and there are legal requirements for this. This one fails to meet those requirements. It looks like a downgrade on the present, and it needs to reflect community values and spirit of place, as well as the needs of the owners. It's a pity this uniquely large for site full demolition and extensive development has romped to full demolition without finding a good solution for demolishing and preserving a thoroughly battered and quirky facade. It palpably does not contribute to the spirit of the place, downgrading rather than energizing it. I ask you to refuse particularly the application for the removal of this historic beam. And thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the applicant, we have Tim Anton. Are you with us this evening? Mr. Anton, you have up to 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, committee members and dear Rachel. My name is Tim Anton. I'm the homeowner of 8 Queensdale Walk, where we have lived since 2016. In April 23, this committee granted us permission to remodel our house so our family with 3 young and growing children can continue to live in the borough. In November last year, we started the works, and today we have nearly fully completed the structural phase without any complications. As with any building project of this nature, we are conscious of the impact on residents in the walk, and our direct neighbors are elderly, and real care needs to be taken for their health and when mitigating the impact from construction. This has been and will continue to be our priority. We now live around the corner and stay close to the construction activities and our neighbors. After all, this is the place where we're going to live. I'm here today to ask for your support for a single variation to our front facade demolition drawing to remove an internal steel beam. Removing this beam is needed to match the approved front facade design. Our approved front elevation has painted solid bricks in keeping with neighboring properties in the walk. That remains unchanged. The approved design includes repositioning the front door and windows. In April, our structural engineers exposed an internal steel beam spanning horizontally across the facade between ground and first floor, as you've seen on the photo. This steel beam is set back in the brickwork and not visible from the outside. It needs to be removed in order to achieve our approved design of solid brickwork. Taking out the beam does not prolong the work or introduce risks. Construction engineers have confirmed taking out the internal beam is straightforward and safe. It's a matter of days to get done. And importantly, the changes to the facade do not take away any historic element, rather will improve the appearance of the conservation area. The facade in its current form was constructed in 2001 and has many elements that are inconsistent with its surrounding, including the rendered brickwork. The horizontal strip visible outside is in fact ornamental rendering on top of a piece of wood, not the beam. The approved design restores the traditional features and creates a clean, solid brickwork front elevation. Going through the planning process for this minor variation underscores our commitment to transparency and continued compliance with RBKC policies. We've worked extensively with planning officers and facilitated site visits, including from Councillor Petit and our neighbours, to explain this variation. We recognize the impact of our project on our direct neighbours, but the objections raised today are about a design already approved, make assumptions about historic value, and bring back grievances from construction already completed. However, together with our neighbours, we have a joint interest, which is to complete the works as soon as possible. The facade is my last step to complete all structural work by mid-September. We hope the committee can support this minor variation and help us realize our family home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to questions. Colleagues who would like to ask the first question. Yes, Councillor Oretti.
Thank you, Chairman. Question to Ms. Palmer, the objector. I've read through your objections. Is your prime reason behind the history of that beam, the aesthetics, the visuals, or is it more of demolition?
It's very, very much a question of history and of quite an interesting lower poor area of the Holland Park, and a distinguished engineer very interestingly described that it was this beam which is on the exterior and through to the interior from the pictures you can see both, is of interest because it was early days of steel and it's made of wood and steel. And other houses, as I've said in the walk, are required to keep their beams or to replace them or to repair them.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So firstly to Mr. Anton. There's been some debate around whether it's an internal or external beam and the extent to which it's visible from the outside. Looking at that picture up there, it does seem like there's certainly a long, thin rectangle running across the middle of the property. Is that the beam, or are you saying that's something else?
Thank you for the question. No, in fact, that is a wooden panel with rendering on top, which mirrors the beam that is lying behind. And the beam that is lying behind you've seen on the picture. And we have exposed this and we have shared this with the planning officer who has confirmed that.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, did you consider leaving, something which, whether it's repairing the beam or replacing the beam or just having something that kept that divide in the property as part of the facade?
So I think we need to separate the structural internal beam, which is a real issue for us to complete a modern facade, and an ornamental detail which is visible here. The structural beam is the issue at the heart of my request. That we cannot fix. It's basically already cut in half. It cannot be load bearing. The changes we need to make to the facade would require other alterations that are not in our scheme. If there was a way to do this, I wouldn't be going through this process, and I hope I can assure you of that. If an ornamental detail would be relevant for the committee, we would surely consider that. But the real question is the finishing of building my facade.
Thank you. And so, Mrs. Palmer, given that, I wonder whether an ornamental detail which reflected, a nod towards the history of the beam, even if the beam itself was removed, would that go some way to alleviating your concerns?
I think the representative, I hope you can hear me, I hope that the beam, because they are so elemental to a property that this was, as a place to place a lift to take hay and heavy loads up to the loft above, and because it has such an interesting history, I think it certainly could be reproduced there, but other houses in the area who had these have been on conservation ways made to replace them. I have been instructed by my party wall surveyor that the beam goes into my wall, so it's just not a little bit of odd little bit of metal.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I just wonder, given the challenges that the applicant has raised in terms of retaining it, it sounds like it is very difficult to do. Whether a compromise would be retaining a sort of ornamental nod towards it on the outside of the property.
I think that would require a lot of thought. There's no reason that another house that was rebuilt in the walk looks as if it has a new beam like that, but the weight there to support the upper part of the facade, which is, as you see, a pretty good mess. I think it'll come down, but it is a supporting beam. It is broken, I think. quite, you know, it doesn't work now because it is out of work.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, it's a bit
Understood.
complicated.
No, understood, thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? I just had one more, again, to Mr. Anton about the rest of the lower facade. Is the plan, because I know the plan is to replace it with brickwork, will the brickwork mirror or be the same as the brickwork on the upper part of the facade? Is that the plan?
Yes, in short, we will use London stock brick to rebuild it and reuse as much as possible the existing brick. As you can see in the upper half, there's a lot of infills from the past that need repointing and touching up, which we'll surely do to make it consistent with our approved design.
Okay, yeah, no, just if you put in some new larger bricks for the bottom half, it might look quite incongruous. Yeah.
No, we are following the approved design, which is scrutinized before.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions before we move to questions to officers? Thank you both very much. We now move to questions to officers. So going to the central point of the beam, I have two questions. Firstly, to what extent, given it's not a listed building, it's just within a conservation area, to what extent do internal details like structural beams have relevance to the committee? That's the first question. The second question is, in terms of what's visible in the facade, is that something we've considered or should consider to have an ornamental detailing on the front that at least maintained the look of that beam from the outside?
Thank you. Happy to answer the questions. So it is very important, as we are within the conservation area, to preserve or enhance the conservation area. The officers really carefully scrutinize in terms of the impact of that additional demolition that we'll have on the wider context and also on the property. Unfortunately, due to the non-listed nature of the building, we can't preserve internal alterations. That's something people can do without planning permission. In terms of the external alteration, that's something was part of the officer's report, and giving the overall demolition that was already approved, the opinion was that the additional level would not harm the conservation area. It would preserve also the matching materials. We are recommending a condition 3, which would ensure that the bricks would match the rest of the building itself as well. And if I might just bring this photo for members, there is quite a bit of variation in terms of the front elevations along this walk. Some properties, yes, you can still have this kind of a render detail in the front, but other properties don't have it. So in terms of the impact on the conservation area and the property itself, it was concluded that it would not harm.
Thank you. So, colleagues, in terms of the visible facade, because I think as we just heard, the internal details, with it not being a listed building, are not something we have much control over. But in terms of the visible facade, I mean, I couldn't see that this sort of separating, well, what might not be a beam, but that separating piece does have some charm, and it's not uniform on the Mews, but there are a couple of other examples. Do you think it would be worth trying to preserve that through some sort of external detailing, through treatment of the facade? What are your thoughts? Councillor Mackover, and then
I was just looking at the demolition front elevation picture in our pack, which has also been shown up there, and it looks like out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images shown, only one other has a detail. I don't know whether that's an original detail or something else that's been on, but I wouldn't feel like insisting to put something pastiche on when both properties on either side of it don't have it. It would look more incongruous to me if we were putting something new on to make it look like something when a lot of the rest of the street wouldn't. I'm not passionate about it, but I do notice that every single house in the demolition front elevation has different windows, different door sizes. In fact, the application property seems to be the only property which has got a remaining chimney on both sides of it. Everything else doesn't seem to have. So I think I just accept that this is a well-emerged local street scene where there is lots of variation, and I don't really have any more to say about the application on that basis.
Thank you. Very helpful. And yes, Councillor Zvedeniuk.
I agree with everything Councillor Makov has said when it comes to the facade. I did have a question for officers though. The objector mentioned that most of the other houses on the Muse, if I understood correctly, are expected to maintain the internal beam on conservation area grounds. So I was just wondering if you're able to speak to that and let me know if there is a precedent already that other residents on the street have not been able to remove the beam or have been told that it must be there for conservation reasons.
Sorry, I'm not aware of any conversations that the officers had with the wider street and the residents in the area, but I would like to remind members that you are making a decision based on the current application in front of you rather than the others, but unfortunately I don't have any details about a conversation with other properties.
Yes, Councillor Bakhtiar.
Chair, I would like to add my voice to Councillor Makov, and I agree with his explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Reti.
I agree with my colleagues, plus also the applicant made sure that he's going to retain the facade upper part, so convinced with that statement. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions to officers? No. It doesn't sound like there's any appetite to add further conditions to this permission beyond what's already included, so we'll proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's 5 in favour. So planning permission is granted. And thank you to everyone who came for that case. We now proceed to 15B Stratford Road.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to draw members' attention again to the addendum report. Additional representations were received, and I would also bring your attention to an additional condition that officers are recommending in terms of the roof terrace. So this application is seeking permission for a mansard roof extension, terrace at the front of the property at the top floor, AC units, changes to a flank elevation and replacement of windows, doors, and installation of a car electric charging point. Members can see in the area view, the red dot points towards the application side. This is the last property within the group that doesn't feature mansard extension. I would like to just let you know that the property on the other side of this group over here benefits from the planning permission. It's just not shown on this area view. We've got the side photographs. The one on the left-hand side has been taken from the neighbouring properties. Windows, you can see the application site just closest to you with its rear elevation. And the photograph on the right-hand side shows the flank elevation and the front elevation. We've got some more photographs of the rear elevation of the property. On the right-hand side, you can see the wider group. We've got the existing front elevation, rear elevation, and the side elevation, and then existing floor plans as well. And this is the proposed elevation showing the mansard extension on the top level with the alterations to the flank elevation showing the stepped design and the alterations to windows at the front and at the rear, and the new charging point just over here on the front elevation. We've got the existing proposed sections and the proposed floor plans showing the terrace at the front with the AC unit as well. And the existing and proposed roof plan. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we joined by Mark Weston?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm
Good
Mark Weston, and
Good evening.
I live in Alma Terrace.
Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second, so I'll get my timer ready. Mr. Weston, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
I have 2 points. One relates to overlooking, and the other relates to changes in the flank wall. One is a documentation issue and should not be contentious, and one is an aesthetics and a light issue. My concern on this application and the now withdrawn application 0345 is that terraces at first floor level and roof level overlook Alma Terrace's gardens and houses. And to be honest, the documents were a little bit unclear and difficult for the layman to understand. We've been here before, and a previous application for a terrace at the first floor level was refused in 1995, just after I moved into the property. I welcome the statement in 8.2 of the planning report that there are no terraces at the rear. I also welcome and thank you for the new condition. The terrace granted in this application only relates to the front of the property, and that the roof of all other extensions forming part of this permission shall not be used at any time as a terrace or amenity space. That helps greatly. I just have one residual concern. I don't know if you could go back, Julia, to the proposed layouts. If you see there in the central column, there's a kitchen with a window opened on it. That is a set of French doors which goes out onto what was originally proposed to be a terrace. That window at the moment has a set of railings across it to stop it being used as a terrace. You can see these on the proposed elevations and the existing elevations. You just can't see it there. And my only ask, so there's just no confusion about this, is that it's labelled and shown that there's an existing set of railings there that stops that being used as a terrace. I don't think that should be contentious, because I don't think it's the applicant's intention to use it as a terrace in this application. That moves me to the flank wall. The residents of 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 and ESSA are opposed to the scheme, and I'm the only one that can make the meeting, so I'm their spokesperson. There is no objection to a mansard extension. However, it is the impact on the flank wall that is causing the problem. The planning officer has concluded 8.2 of the report that the raising of the height of the chimneys and the change in the symmetry of the flank wall will cause a degree of harm to the character and appearance of the building, and later that the planning officer mentions that the alterations are regrettable. There is also the issue that the new wall would cut out sunlight, and at the very least a BRE daylight and sunlight assessment should have been carried out as a minimum requirement. So that's the 2 points. One relates to a documentation. Can we please label the existing railings? And 2, there's an objection to the changing of the flank wall. I've still got a little bit of time left, so I'm just going to thank the planning officers. I think they've been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And bear with me. Are we joined by Robert Pavelkovits? Hopefully I got that right. For the applicant, you have also 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you. So if I may maybe start responding to this question. The railing is in place currently. This is not a window, it is actually a door. And as you are well aware, we submitted a separate application.
Apologies, if you could address the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
We submitted a separate application in relation to this terrace, which was discussed with the planners. There was some concern raised. We tried to mitigate the effect of potential overlooking. We also saw a lot of objections from the neighbors, and because of that we withdrew that application. We do not have intention to create that terrace, and this is not a part of that scheme at all. And I read most recent objection, which related to the parapet wall, saying this parapet wall is not in place. This is not correct. There is a parapet wall. It's quite small. It's around half a meter. And there is no intention to make any changes to that wall. This wall will remain at the height as it is currently. The railing is shown on both. I know it's difficult to read because it's a very small line really, which the railing is attached to the back wall, forms sort of a Juliet balcony. Again, there is no change, no plan to make any changes to this. In terms of the flank wall, I read those objections. I went again to the property to see this, because one of the objectors claimed this can be seen from a long view. This is incorrect statement. We've got on one side, on the northern side of Stratford Road, there is a brick wall which is over 2 meters with the hedges which are another 1 meter over that wall. There is no possibility for passers-by to see any part of that wall if you are on the northern side. If you are on the southern side, you can see this only on a window which is around 15 meters. I measured that. If you are coming from the east side, it's impossible to see this if you are coming from the western side. The same apply to really the house which is on the other side. We are in a row of 4 houses which are pretty much identical. All of them, as you are well aware, have got those mansard extensions. The party wall and the chimney was raised on the property number 21 based on the planning application which was approved in 2021. And I didn't see at this time any objections to those plans. So this chimney and party wall is seen from houses in surrounding area. The only difference is not seen from the people who, as I explained earlier, approach from yes.
Understood. Well, thank you very much. Colleagues, who would like to ask the first question? So I just wanted to understand a little bit more on the flank wall. So I'll start with Mr. Weston. Is it purely, so putting daylight aside, purely in terms of aesthetics, is your belief that any change to that flank wall would have a negative impact on the conservation area?
There are 2 things that are a problem. One is the raising of the flank wall, which gives a sense of foreboding to the houses at number 4 and number 5 Alma Terrace, because it's an even bigger wall in front of them, so putting the chimneys up. And secondly, it's a matter of aesthetics, that the chimneys themselves, there's a new word I came across that the planning office has used called legibility, would not be as legible under the new arrangements as they are under the old arrangements. You can see on the left-hand side that chimney pot would go up by 50 centimetres and then there would be tapering on either side. Just don't think it looks as good.
Okay, so mixture of aesthetics and sense of enclosure. Understood. And for Mr. Pavelkovic, did you, the raising of the chimneys and the raising of that flank wall, presumably is it of fundamental importance to the mansard, i.e. did you explore keeping it in more or less its current state? Is that possible with the building of the mansard?
Important, because we would like to keep the line of a roof over the mansard in line with the other properties which got those mansards in place currently. As you probably noticed on the drawings, we already need to lower the top floor to enable a decent height of that newly created loft. I would like to explain also and clarify that the chimney is about 4 meters wide, and we are proposing to raise this within the chimney by 4 courses of bricks, which is about a foot. So we are talking about this height of a wall, which currently is 42 feet, which is around 2% of the height of this wall. So the really effect is marginal. I doubt that would be even noticeable if you wouldn't know that the change was done.
Yes, understood. Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions on this one? Yes, Councillor Rossi.
Question to the objector, Mr. Weston. You talked about previous issues raising the mansard, but there's already 2 floors where I'm sure there's a back window where they can already see, because you're on the, I don't know if it's west side, but you're diagonal to the property. So what difference would it make to you if there's an existing floor where they can see through? Thank you.
My objection to the mansard is not to do with privacy. My objection on privacy is the potential for there to be terraces at the back. And I simply want the railings that are there at the moment to be labelled on the plan, which seems quite straightforward.
Yeah, I think we can address that point with officers in the next section. Yes, Councillor Zvedeniak.
Yeah, a question to the applicant. The objector raised some concerns around overlooking and also loss of daylight, and asked if a daylight and sunlight assessment has been done. You also mentioned in your response, I think you said that you'd taken measures to mitigate the effect of overlooking. Could you explain what measures have been taken to mitigate that?
Application which was withdrawn. This was about the rear terrace over this from the kitchen, which this was misunderstanding. This is not a part of that application, and as I said, we are not having plans to proceed with this. So there is no intention to do a terrace from the kitchen. Yes. And in terms of overlooking, there is no case. The mansard got a small dormer which is set back from the back wall by a meter. The terrace at the front is very similar to the terraces in neighboring properties. There are much bigger terraces, as you know, on your street, sometimes 3 or 4 times the size. And in our case, the existing parapet walls are actually quite high. They are around 1.8 meters. There is no possibility to see anything from the other side. Also, there would be an air conditioning placed by this wall. You can't even come into that wall to see anything. I don't think we've got a case. In terms of light loss, the second question, we asked the planners if it would be necessary to provide a loss light assessment. But because what I said earlier, with such a marginal change over this very tall wall, it was concluded it's not needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move to questions to officers? No? So we now move to questions to officers. I think I'll ask the first one, just to clear up this point on the drawings and whether the railings are listed or not, and just to prevent that terrace use, if you could cover that, please.
Perfect. Let me just bring up the plan. So this is the existing rear elevation. The railings and the door is the one over here, which this is the lower level extension, and this is the element I believe the neighbours got concerns with. And then in terms of the existing, in terms of the proposed elevations, again you can see the railings around the door on this level.
So we're confident that the terrace or the space there cannot be used as a terrace?
Yes, and then also on this plan, I'm not sure whether members and public can see it, but there is a line just in front of the door, which that is the railings they are being proposed.
Okay, a very thin line, we've got it sort of on record at committee that those are railings and the committee.
But also, sorry, just within the addendum report, we are recommending a condition, just to clarify that point, that the roof terrace, if granted, is only in relation to the third floor front terrace. No other terraces are part of this application.
Okay, that's good to clarify. Colleagues, other questions? Just going back to the flank wall, so 2 questions on the flank wall. Firstly, in terms of aesthetics, is that a typical shape for the area? Is it a heritage loss to to change, as was mentioned, the legibility of the chimneys?
So yes, in terms of the character of the area, this is quite a usual shape flank elevation within the borough, with the chimney stacks on top of it, and we've got the step design. However, this group of properties has already been quite altered significantly over time. There are other properties, as members can see further along the group. There's a variation in terms of parapet walls along there. So the next door application is going to Mansard. So this application is proposing to match the height of the next door in terms of the structure integrity of the extension. So yes, on the one hand, it is.
So the chimney height is also being changed at the next door one. Well, appreciate it's not an end of terrace, but it is being changed.
Yes, so they are proposing to raise it by 50 centimetres approximately.
And then in terms of sense of enclosure, could you speak to the points raised on that? I mean, it's already quite a large wall. This is a small increase, but it is an increase. Why don't we think it would harm the sense of enclosure of neighbours?
Yes, it's a very important point for the impact on the neighbouring properties. But in terms of our assessment, we do take into consideration the existing context. This is already quite a tall building within the setting. In our opinion, raising it by 50 centimetres would not materially harm the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties.
And then finally, on the sunlight daylight, judging by what's said in the report, but just to double check, we're completely confident that a report is not necessary because we think there's no risk of levels being breached. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have made our assessment in terms of daylight and sunlight, and the BRI guidance the report is not always necessary for us to make that assessment. But as part of this application, the officers did it and raised no concerns with it.
Thank you, colleagues. Any further questions? No. Well, I mean, I think we've cleared up the railings and privacy issue, hopefully satisfactorily. So it's predominantly the flank wall that's an issue. I mean, it is a change to what is presumably a typical design, and it will slightly increase the sense of enclosure. But then again, it is a very minor change, about a foot. So I think that's the key point to weigh up. So I'll proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? Okay, that's 5 in favour. So planning permission is granted. Thank you to everyone who came for that case. We now proceed to Holbein Place.
Thank you, Chairman. That's, again, I'm going to present the application. I would like to draw members' attention to addendum report. There are some additional representations being received. This application is seeking to vary condition 3 of a previously granted scheme to allow a temporary permission to extend hours of operation until 1 a.m. until May 2025. This is the site location plan. Number 2 Holbein Place is outlined in red on both plans, and in blue it's outlined Wanslawn Gardens. Just a bit of a background information for members on those two sites. So planning permission was granted in 2020 to change the use of the retail to dual retail / drinking use at 2 Holbein Place in association with the hotel bar at number 1. The Wanslawn Gardens is a hotel with a bar on the lower level, which members will see later in my presentation. The main entrance and exit from the hotel is at Wanslawn Gardens. That permission was granted, but permission was granted to use 2 Holbein Place as a retail unit during the day, and then outside the retail hours, it would be used as an entrance and exit for the lower ground floor bar. There will be a secondary exit and access. The condition attached to that permission states that the ancillary use shall only be carried out no other than between 6:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. In 2022, temporary permission was granted to extend those hours until 1 a.m. This permission was granted for a temporary period for 24 months. However, this permission now expired. The planning permission was also granted at One Sloane Gardens to extend the operating hours until 1 a.m. and that permission doesn't expire until May next year. And after May, the operating hours would revert back to 11 p.m. unless a new permission is granted. This current application is seeking a temporary permission to extend the hours of operation until 1 a.m. to align with the temporary permission that's already been granted at One Sloane Gardens. I've just got some photos for members to see the existing site. So at the bottom we've got the access to a hotel at number 1, and the photograph on the top shows Holborn Place. And this is the approved plans. Again, on the ground floor, lower ground floor is on the left-hand side, and the ground floor on the left. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be joined by Gary Stolkin for the objectors. Mr. Stolkin, are you here? No, I don't think so. Give me one moment.
If the objector's not here to speak, then the applicants can't speak either. Those are the rules.
Okay. Has anyone seen anyone just pop out for a moment? No. Okay, looks like he hasn't arrived. So, yes, as Lorna Barry just mentioned, applicants can only speak when objectors are also speaking. So because the objector isn't here, the applicant can't speak either, so my apologies to Mr. Henderson and his team for a bit of a wasted trip. So we proceed straight to questions to officers. Colleagues, who has a question in this case? No, Councillor Retty, go ahead.
Julia, just checking, so the hours of operation, is that extended or is it just the variation in that condition? Thank you.
So this application is varying the already granted hours. The granted hours are between 6:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. and the applicant is seeking to vary those hours until between 6:30 and 1 a.m.
Well, that's extension.
Yeah, to the hours.
To the hours, right? Okay. Right, thank you.
And can I double check with the previous extension that was granted? Has that been used, or due to construction works, it hasn't been used yet?
From the information I had, the bar hasn't been used from until 1 a.m. just yet because there is no license at this stage.
Okay. So but
the applicant is working on it.
Okay. So the temporary extension is to test it out, see if it causes problems. They haven't been able to use that temporary extension yet, so this is just sort of a renewal of that to allow them to test it out. But yes, Councillor Retty, go ahead.
I guess they still have to go for licensing as an approval process to use that.
Yes, I believe the applicants already applied for it and is in the process of gaining one.
Any other questions? No? In which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous. So planning permission is granted. How are we doing for time? Okay. We now proceed to Dove House Green on Kings Road.
Good evening and thank you, Chairman. This application is seeking planning permission for the installation of public artwork and a separate lectern sign to Dove House Green. The first slide shows the site location plan with the application site outlined in red. At present, Dove House Green is a public park with open green space and park benches located on the corner of Kings Road and Dove House Street. The site lies within Cheney Conservation Area, and the southern end of Dove House Green is paved in York stone, which is the portion of the park to which the proposals relate. The following two slides show photos from the site as existing. Presently, the site features temporary public sculpture similar in siting, scale, and materiality to the proposed sculpture, with the park benches formed around the artwork in a V shape. These additional site photographs show the existing sculpture as viewed from various vantage points within the site. This image details the proposed site location plan, showing the proposed siting of both the sculpture and the associated lectern sign near Kings Road, shown in blue on the right side of the screen. These four visuals provide details and dimensions of the sculpture installation. The proposed sculpture of Oscar Wilde by Scottish artist Sir Eduardo Palozzi would measure 3.2 meters in width, 2 meters in height, and 2.3 meters in length, and would be formed of bronze. This next slide provides a visual of the proposed sculpture atop a 25 centimeter high concrete plinth in situ at Dove House Green. And finally, this slide shows details of the dimensions of the proposed A2 lectern sign, which would stand on 1 meter high posts. Both the installation of the sculpture and the lectern sign would require minor excavation works at 300 millimeters and 600 millimeters respectively. The applicant has provided a watching brief detailing that any excavation exceeding 300 millimeters in depth would require archaeological supervision, as the site was formerly a burial ground between the years 1733 and 1824 and is a Tier 2 archaeological priority area. It's also noted that both the Consistory Court of the Diocese of London and the Greater London Archaeological Advisory Service have approved the submitted watching brief. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have Richard Burgess registered to speak for objectors. Mr. Burgess, thank you for joining us. You have up to 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I want to read my letter of objection as a structure, as this will give you the basic facts. Principal reason for objection is loss of public open space. This is the most prominent flat open space left in the area and has been extensively used and enjoyed by the community since 1951. And since the major revival of the gardens in 1977, and I'm the only living member of the committee that actually made that happen. It is used by small children, mums with prams, and elderly people on mobility vehicles. The adjacent public pavement is so crammed with electric hire bikes, up to 30 or 40 at a time, that is often impassable without walking over the area in question. Even evening, occasionally, this open flat area is sometimes used by a group of local skateboarders. This land was given to the parish of St Luke's in 1734 and consecrated by the Bishop of London in 1736. The loss of around 10 metres, approximately 108 square feet, and probably another 2 or 3 square metres, approximately 30 square feet for the ridiculous information plaque, stroke lectern, will eat up in reality a much larger area and dominate the whole of this cherished open space. It is so massive, so obtrusive, a 1907 in the brutalism style, emulating Soviet Union giant heads popular at the time. Totally unsuitable for our delicate 18th century Sylvan Woods village green in the heart of Old Chelsea. I could go on about costs, but perhaps we could deal with that by a question. But we know the council have committed £150,000 of the cost, which is going to be in excess of £300,000 of our money. And on top of the allegedly 100,000 that already has been spent extensively preparing the site and the stone and changing all the seats, I'll talk about that perhaps by a question. Also, over the last few months, I have shown the photographic impression to almost 200 people. No one liked it. Words like vile, ugly, and bad, totally inappropriate, were often expressed. Why spoil this open space? Why indeed? save our open space? And why is 300,000 to 400,000 of our money being squandered on it? Those were all comments widely used by the people I spoke to. Furthermore, the London plan does have policy on open and protected space. The spatial planning, as set out in the mayor's in the London plan, under section 346 of
sorry, could you just conclude, because we've passed 3 minutes now. So
under
final
section
sentence.
346 of the GLA Act 1999, as this is definitely should be considered, as this will result in the loss of and change of use of open space. There are other comments, perhaps we could deal with those under a question.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? No, I mean, we're, just one quick question. We're not an art review panel, of course, but presumably some people would say that this artwork would improve the quality and their enjoyment of the open space, and it would seem our late Queen saw fit to knight Edoardo Pagliozzi for his contributions to art. So do you not think that some people would enjoy its presence there, and for many it would improve the quality of the open space? No, any comments on? No. Okay. Yes, please do.
Right. The adverse effect on the land adjacent is it's going to totally dominate the area, and as we know, and you'll see that in one of the other letters, Oscar Wilde is a very, very controversial figure. There are many of these Pagliozzi heads in Edinburgh, and they get widely graffitied and abused. And of course, the one in Paris, as is circulated in a letter, is the most graffitied and abused tomb in Paris. But we were never consulted about this. And I might also draw your attention to the article in the Evening Standard saying Oscar Wilde would detest such an ugly tribute. And there's an article by an extremely leading arts correspondent for the Evening Standard. We were never consulted. There were there were articles in the Chelsea Society magazine and the Parish magazine, but no one have actually asked us. And the Parks Department went to such lengths to obfuscate and hide this application. It was only at the very last minute somebody was alerted to one little notice which had been stuck on a rubbish bin 8 inches from the ground, and that was the only indication in Chelsea we knew about it. No plans were ever shown in Chelsea. They were found somewhere in Holland Park at the last moment. And I think there should have been widespread consultation, as we had in 1977. This is too important. This is vitally one of the last lungs of Chelsea. And the whole concept of the plan back in 77 was to create open space. Well, why are we covering it with this extremely unattractive, great big chunk of metal, which being solid bronze is indestructible? We've got it into eternity.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we might pick up the point on consultation in the next section. Do you have a question for officers? Or okay, so yeah, we now move on to questions for officers. Councillor Bakhtiar.
Thank you, Chair. Well, consultation is an important thing to involve locals and residents and business owners to whatever happens. And I've been a member of this committee. I've joined in 2014, and we always focused on consultation. The question is, did you send out letters for immediate neighbors, or did you send letters to residents associations, at least in that area?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, there was a preliminary round of public consultation by St. Luke's in Christchurch, where they posted a site notice detailing the proposed works. But for this current application, there was a period of public consultation, of full 21-day consultation, where a site notice was posted on Kings Road, as well as letters being sent to neighboring residences and businesses.
And just quickly on that, how many responses do you know?
There were 4 objections, and if you look at the addendum report, there were a total of 5 letters in support of the application.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Bakhtiar.
Yeah.
And then
A follow-up
Councillors.
on the same question. What was the length of the consultation, and how did you contact them? My question was, did you send out letters to immediate neighbors and to resident associations, not just a website advertisement saying we are doing this?
Letters were sent to businesses and neighbors surrounding Dove House Green, detailing the proposed works, as well as detailing information about where they could find drawings and additional documentation on the proposals.
How many people did you send to?
50,
how many
50,
letters went out?
53.
Councillor Zvedeniuk.
Yes, so question for the officers. So this is a conservation area, and presumably any artwork or sculptures or anything to be placed in a conservation area should be in keeping with the character of the area or enhance its beauty and so on. So I just wanted to know myself, what is the process by which artwork such as this is agreed on, sort of prior to consultation? What process, who sort of agrees on approves a particular sculpture or artwork to be placed in a conservation area?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. For this application, the assessment was made by contacting colleagues in design and conservation who were consulted as part of this application, and they raised no objection to the proposed development, and it was officers' position that the proposals were in keeping with the character and appearance of the conservation area, particularly given that at present there's an existing temporary sculpture which is similar in siting, materiality, and scale, which sets precedence for such development, and it wasn't considered that the proposals would introduce any level of harm to the conservation area.
Colleagues, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Rossi.
Thank you. Just to check, I know it might not be on a planning consideration, but choosing a poet, a historic poet, is that not? I mean, whose proposal was that? First question. I mean, is any grounds that it's objectionable to certain audience?
Choosing a what? Sorry.
Choosing the sculpture. I mean, Oscar Wilde. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll let you on.
Sorry, could you repeat
just
the
to say,
question?
I don't think I disagree with the point made earlier that Oscar Wilde is a controversial figure in British history. Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's not a material planning consideration because we're not in possession of the piece of art.
Any other questions? I just had one about the notice, because the quality of the notice board doesn't seem quite commensurate with the quality of the sculpture. Maybe we could go to... Yeah, it looks a little bit garish. Was the notice board as well reviewed by conservation officers?
Yes, it was.
And this might be too much detail, but what is because everyone knows who the statue's of, what does the notice board say? What information does it provide?
That wasn't material planning consideration as part of this application.
Which is to see if it's necessary, I suppose, is the point. but
we're only assessing the scale and the design of
but
the
so the question is, do you have any information on what the notice board is, what information it's providing?
No information about what's on the board.
Okay, looks like it might be a timeline of some sort. Anyway, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Bakhtiar.
Final question. Sorry for insisting, but did you send an email or a letter of consultation to Kings Road Association?
Which association? Sorry? There's. Yes.
Just to make something clear, I understand that is not what is actually going to be on the lectern. That's just an example of what might be on it. So that is just showing the size and the overall style of what the end result of the lectern would look like. It's not supposed to show. It's not going to be looking like that in terms of the content.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's helpful. Sorry, the question you had, Councillor Bakhtiar, was the Kings Road Association informed about the consultation. Do you have the answer to that?
If I might just step in on this one. So as part of the application, we've carried out the statutory duty in terms of the consulting neighbouring properties and businesses, as Neville already mentioned, and the site notice as well was displayed close to the site. That is the statutory duties that we have to adhere to. As well, the Gardens Trust was consulted and Historic England in terms of the archaeological information. The application was also advertised on the weekly list. So members of Residents Association would have that information on the website, but we don't consult directly with the Residents Associations, but it was advertised on the weekly list and in the newspaper for them to comment if they wish to.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments on this one before we proceed to the vote? Well, broadly, I think it's certainly a high quality sculpture made by a renowned artist. It may not be everyone's cup of tea. I suppose Oscar Wilde's plays weren't when he published them, but I think it is at least certainly of a quality that we'd expect in Kensington and Chelsea, and certainly on the King's Road. Any other comments? No. In which case,
could I have?
No, sorry. Apologies, you can't. No, sorry.
The lectern.
Sorry, sir. We must proceed to a vote now. So the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? All those against? So it's 4-1 in favour. So planning permission is granted. We now move on to 503 Kings Road.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The application before you is to do with an outbuilding to the rear of 503 Kings Road. The proposal seeks to change the use of the outbuilding, outlined in red here, to provision for a small office. It also involves alterations to the roof to create a pitched roof and works to the northern elevation of the outbuilding and the provision of a door in place of an existing roll shutter. This is an aerial view of the site, and members will note the outbuilding sandwiched between the existing pitched roof outbuilding and the rear elevation of 503. So you can see the roll shutter door located just where my cursor is at the moment. These are the existing and proposed floor plans of the outbuilding. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen the opening doors to the office. And this is the existing and proposed roof plan. So you'll see the provision of a pitched roof and a glazed overlay to the front part of the outbuilding. Here we have the existing and proposed elevations, and members will note on the bottom drawing the doors that will be provided for entry into the office. And these are some sectional drawings of the proposal, which will include here a high-level window. This is some images of the street, so you can see in the middle there the entrance to the outbuilding, and these are some pictures internally of that outbuilding. The recommendation is set out in the committee papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we don't have any speakers on this case, so straight to questions to officers. Colleagues, any questions? I just thought I would raise one regarding the limitation to office use only and why we thought it was necessary to be that prescriptive. Could we have, why it isn't just Class E generally, or if it's restricted, why do we have to go so far as to say office use only?
Of course, thank you for the question. So a previous application was submitted and withdrawn, which was looking for a wider E-class use. The reason that we have asked for it to be specifically conditioned just for office use is because some of the wider E-class uses include industrial processes that could involve machinery which might cause noise and disturbance, and therefore we would need acoustic reports, etc., to accompany such a planning application. So this proposal does restrict the use to the office. However, the applicant could make a further application to change the use, which we would consider on its material merits at that time. But at this stage, on the basis of the information we have before us, we feel it's necessary to restrict it to office use to protect external residents from any potential noise and disturbance.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions on this one? No? In which case, we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous. Planning permission is granted. I think we'll take another case before we have a quick break. So we now move on to number 15, Gloucester Road.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. This application is seeking consent for a temporary scaffold shroud screen with 2 externally lit areas. This is the site location plan with the area for the shroud outlined in red. This is the site photograph showing the existing building. The existing and proposed west elevation showing the proposed scaffolding and the shroud. The blue rectangular here shows the proposed area for advertisement. And this is the existing proposed south elevation. Again, the blue area shows where the advert is going to be. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? I have one regarding the works that are due to be carried out, the reason the scaffolding is there. Do we have any details of the plan of works, how long we expect it to take? Because obviously it's being applied for a year. So any more detail you could provide on that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Yes, I did check the history of the property in terms of the other works carried out. Unfortunately, I couldn't see any details in terms of the timescale of the works they're proposing and how long it's going to take. As part of this application, they are seeking for 1 year extension, but unfortunately, I don't have any information how long it's actually going to take at the end.
Okay, and then in terms of the lighting, are there any restrictions proposed as to when that lighting should be turned off, just so it has less of an impact on neighbours at night time?
Thank you. So as part of the recommended conditions, we are recommending to restrict the amount of illumination. However, it is within the members' discretion if you wish to restrict the hours of illumination. That will be unreasonable given the residential and conservation area as well, if members wish to add it on.
And if, I'll raise it with the committee in a moment, but if we were to restrict it, is there a particular time that is typical or that you would recommend?
I think probably around 10 p.m. would be reasonable, between 10 and 7 a.m. Colleagues,
what do you think about the principle of turning the lights off at night? Yeah, and timing? 10, or does anyone think a different time? Okay. Well, 10 p.m. is the time that's been suggested. If we want to say. Yes, Councillor Macover.
Regarding your earlier comment, I agree that as it's entirely surrounded by residential and however bright people think it is, at night time you don't necessarily want to be looking at an 86 square metre advert out of your window lit 24/7. It's not Piccadilly Circus. There needs to be some appreciation of the fact that it's a normal residential area. In terms of the length of time, because the reason that is given for putting scaffolding up is to inspect the building, is it reasonable in terms of the amenity of residents that that if they find there's only something minor that needs doing, having put the scaffolding up, that it just stays up for the purpose of advertisement for a year? Because it seems that this seems to be potentially could be looked like it's being driven by the advertisement consent rather than by the actual building requirement. It's a very good looking listed building that does definitely contribute to the amenity of residents, and also the fact that a lot of the area, in fact the whole of the street it's at the end of, is listed as well. I think there should be something which informs them that this consent should be restricted, and if the works are continuing, then they can come back and ask for an extension, as people sometimes do with an advert. But the 1 year just seems, for what is a normal brick building, most repairs, and there hasn't been anything applied for in listed building terms, most repairs, a bit of bad brickwork, etc., would not take that long to complete.
Thank you for your question. Yes, as Councillor said, it is quite important to restrict. It is quite difficult just because we don't have the numbers of months they're proposing to carry out the works. However, it is within members' discretion if the 1 year might seems too long, given the kind of the reason why they need it. If members think, for example, 6 months, it would be beneficial, then we could amend that condition as well to restrict it, and as Councillor said, they can come back to further extend it with further information in front of us if necessary.
Thank you, that's helpful. So I'm just trying to remember that what Councillor Macover said there, that the scaffolding's up just to do an inspection of the building. Is that correct?
I believe it's the inspection of the building because it's a listed building, so they might need a little bit more time rather than just a normal building within the conservation area, and there might be some repairs that will be part of the listed building consent, but unfortunately I don't have the information how long that is going to take. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose if they don't find anything, they could be done in a month, and if they find significant problems, it could take years. But so for the initial phase, I mean, colleagues, I don't mind either way, really. Do you think it makes sense to restrict the timing maybe to 6 or 9 months, and then they just come back again if they need a bit longer? Is that? Yeah. Yeah. And I think, am I right in saying that this planning application or its renewal will be free because it's a listed building? Is that correct? Planning applications, you don't pay a fee for listed buildings.
That's correct. For the listed building consent, you don't pay a fee for.
So it's not actually a financial burden for the applicant either to have to come back again. So 6 months, 9 months?
Sorry, if I can clarify. For the advertisement consent, they will have to pay.
Oh, there is. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. 6 months, 9 months, colleagues, any thoughts? 6. Okay. 6 months seems to be the consensus. So just to recap, we're going to condition lights have to be turned off at 10 p.m. and not turned on again until the following morning. 7? Yeah? 7, 10? Okay. Yeah, from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. lights must be switched off. and, well, we'll say 7:30. You don't want to force people to wake up at 7 if they don't want to. From 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. lights to be turned off, and we only want this to apply for 6 months, not for 12 months.
Yes, sorry, Chairman. Is that
yeah.
6 months from today, or is it 6 months from when the decision notice?
Just 6 months from the decision notice. Yeah. Any other questions before we proceed to a vote? Okay. Well, the recommendation with those amendments we just made is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? And that's unanimous, and consent is granted. Right. We'll just have a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for the final cases. So we'll reconvene the meeting and we'll go to item number 8, Whitstable House.
Thank you, Chair. The application before members for Whitstable House is for the replacement of windows, roof cover and balcony railings. The site is part of the wider Silchester estate and the application has previously been approved by Planning Committee. It's come in because the time limit has expired on the application. Julia is not moving. There we go. So here is the application site plan. Here you can see Whitstable House. And these are aerial photographs, so here you can see all of the windows are proposed for replacement on the building. These are the elevations of the building, and these are the proposed window types. The windows will be roughly like for like in a grey colour and are being replaced for thermal improvement and improvement to the external envelope of the building. The recommendation is set out in the committee report.
Colleagues, any questions on that? Could you just go back one image quickly? So the blue boxes there, that's like for like, that exists already, does it?
Yes, the windows are by and large like for like replacements, other than obviously there's a slight variation to the colour, but that will reflect the wider colour of the building itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, in which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous. Planning permission is granted. So we now proceed to Dixon House.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is the similar application to the one that members have just seen. It's for the replacement of windows, roof cover and balcony railings. The application has been previously approved by the committee. This is the location of Dixon House, which is also part of the wider Silchester estate. This is an aerial view of Dixon House. These are the proposed elevations. And these are the proposed window types, again, a like-for-like replacement across the building. The report, I draw members' attention to the addendum which just made some corrections to the officer report, and the recommendation is set out in the committee report.
Colleagues, any questions? No. Well, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimous. Planning permission is granted. We now proceed to Frinstead House.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Frinstead House follows a wider package of refurbishment works to the Silchester estate, which is for the replacement of windows, roof cover and balcony railings. This is the location of Frinstead House within the Silchester estate. This is an aerial view of that building. These are the elevations and these are the proposed windows. I should mention there is a degree of double glazing, but it represents like for like from the existing. The recommendation is set out in the committee report.
Yep. So just to double check, perhaps I should have done on the first one, I assume these are broadly improving the thermal performance of the apartments within the building?
Yes, they're improving the thermal performance and again improving the character and appearance of the building because they're doing improvement works to the external facades of all of those buildings.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? Recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimously granted. We now proceed to ground floor 18 and 20 Stratford Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is seeking planning permission for alterations to a shop front and a provision of a step-free access, installation of an awnings and advertisement consent. Members will also see in their pack the advertisement consent as well on this site. I would like to draw a member's attention to the addendum report. Just quickly, the location plan, site photographs of the existing retail unit, which you can see on the corner here. This is the existing shop front that is proposed to be changed. The existing shop front and proposed shop front elevation with the proposed signage as well and the awnings at the front. The proposed floor plan and the proposed signage plan, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? No, I'll just double check on one point raised by objectors. They still will, although you'll have the signage at the top for La Piccola Deli, they will own the whole place. There will still be a visual division between the two units. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, that's correct. In our assessment, given the column in between the shop fronts and the additional doors and the separate awnings, we believe there will still be the visual separation between the units.
So if in the future it split in two again, they'd have to do some internal works, but from a street perspective, that would be quite possible.
That's correct, yes. They will have to just change the fascia signage and internal work.
Excellent, thank you. Colleagues, any other questions on that one? No? Does anyone declare an interest in croissants? No, okay. Recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in? Oh, yes, sorry.
There's two separate applications. So
right. Yeah. Because on my agenda, I just have it as one item. But there's, P piece is the planning permission, and then CA is that?
Conservation, that's the
Advertisement consent. Okay. Yeah. Right. On the planning permission, the recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous. Planning permission is granted. On the advertisement consent, recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? And that's also unanimously granted. Thank you for that. We now proceed to number 18 Milner Street.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a discharge of condition to an already approved application. The approved application was for replacement shop front, lower ground floor extension, and mansard extension. Condition 13 was applied to secure details of the proposed sustainable urban drainage strategy. As you can see, this is the location of 18 Milner Street on the corner between Milner Street and Halsey Street. These are the existing and proposed sections of the approved application. I will draw members' attention to the right-hand side image with the extension to the lower ground floor, which is the primary justification for the imposition of the condition, because it relates to our basement policies. These are the details of the sustainable urban drainage system, which includes the provision of permeable paved areas and the provision of a rainwater planter. The proposals are considered to achieve in excess of a 50% betterment to the site. This is just an example of one of the rainwater gardens as a sustainable urban drainage system. The flood officer has reviewed the application and found it acceptable, and the recommendation is set out in the committee papers, and I would draw members' attention to the addendum report and the additional representation received.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions on that one? I just wanted to double check the point raised in one of the objections around what is and isn't included in the calculation. So when we say 50% betterment of the site, is that including the whole site or just the part that's being the work's being done on?
So reference to 50% is taken from what is now our old local plan, the 2019 local plan, which required a 15% betterment of surface water runoff. We obviously have now moved into the new local plan and GB12, which only details development and householder applications. Development has to achieve greenfield runoff and householders have to produce a proportionate response. When we apply conditions, we have to apply them against the National Planning Policy Guidance, which requires us to take a proportionate approach in the application of conditions. So in this instance, given the level of works, which isn't major development, it is minor development, it is considered that the proposal would result in no harm to sustainable urban drainage and indeed would represent an improvement because they are putting in, for example, porous surfaces where there currently are none. And actually, I think there's some suggestion that it would exceed 70% betterment to the site. So we can safely say that there's no harm to the site, and we can say that there is a degree of betterment, but it is a proportionate response to the application, and the flood officer, who obviously works on those policies, is satisfied with the details that have been provided.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Colleagues, any other questions? No? In which which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? That's unanimously granted. So we now proceed to 18 Kelso Place.
Thank you, Chair. The application for 18 Kelso Place seeks permission for a rear extension on the roof of the existing ground floor extension. Due to the split-level nature of the existing ground floor extension is described as a second-storey extension. The application site contains an end-of-terrace unit, 18 Kelso Place, which is the terminus of Kelso Place and adjoins with the outrigger of number 10 Cornwall Mews West, which you can see to the south of that site. You can also see to the east the back gardens of Stanford Road. This is an image of the application site, so you can see at the bottom of your screens there the rear outriggers of Stanford Road properties, and you can see on the left-hand side of the screen the rear elevations of those properties along Cornwall Mews West. These are some site photos. In the central photo you can see the rear outriggers of the properties along Stanford Road, and then on the furthest photo you can see the rear elevations of those properties along Cornwall Mews West. This is the existing site plan with the existing rear outrigger, and this is the proposed plan with the extension, which is set back from the ultimate rear elevation and has chamfered edges. This is an existing rear elevation, and this is the proposed with a single window on the rear elevation. The report sets out the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions on that? No, I just had one on the... Could you go back to the image showing the properties opposite on Stanford Road, please? Yeah, so the outriggers on Stanford Road are coming... So that, am I right saying that middle picture is the Stanford Road property, is that right? So they're already coming quite far towards Kelso Place. Is the height of the, if you have the information, is the height of the extension at Kelso Place going to be any higher than the outriggers it's facing on Stanford Road?
I couldn't say for certain in terms of meterage, but I would assume so given its position on its existing rear extension. So if we look at the rear elevation here, obviously sits above that, so it sits below the ridge line of the property, as you can see here, quite far below. And so when you compare that with that of Stanford Road, you can see it's sort of commensurate in terms of set down from roof level. So in terms of the character and appearance, it would be very similar.
Okay, so if there's any difference, it would be minor, and certainly not in terms of floors. Any other questions on
An
this
objector.
case? Yeah, Councillor Bhatia.
Yeah. An objector of flat 7 Cornwall Gardens saying this proposal, this project will have a depressing sense of enclosure, reduced natural light into his flat, and reduced outlook. Can you show us where is this flat in the proximity of this proposed development?
So the development sits on top of this rear outrigger. I don't know if you can see my cursor from that point. In the red line you can see the outrigger it would sit on top of. The extension has been specifically designed to reduce any sense of enclosure because it has been provided with chamfered edges. So as you can see here, the edges of the outrigger have been set in to ensure views are maintained to the property. The properties along Cornwall West. I mean, in terms of the extent of enclosure, obviously there are outriggers which have extended above ground floor level along that road, and so outlook would not be subject to significant visual intrusion. There would likely still be views of skyline from those properties, given the relevant distances involved, and indeed the setback nature of the extension and the chamfered edges to the rear extension.
Do you have an estimate of what the distance is?
I don't, but in terms of the context of the area and the existing degrees of outlook, I think you can see from Stamford Road there are already extensions of this nature sat against that rear elevation of Cornwall West Mews. So there's not going to be a significant change in terms of that sense of enclosure. It won't be significant.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? No. Okay, in which case we proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? All those against? So that's 4 to 1, and Planning Permission is granted. And then we move to our final case, 61 Edith Grove.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is seeking planning permission for roof terrace and replacement of windows. I would like to draw your attention to the addendum report. We've got a site location plan, the area view with the red arrow pointing towards the application site. As members can see, there are other roof terraces in the vicinity of the site, especially on the other side of this group. The site photographs front and from the rear of the application site. Site photographs from Kings Road and Edith Terrace. Existing and proposed front elevations showing the replacement windows and the roof terrace and the railings on the top level. And the existing proposed rear elevation, again showing the railings and alterations to the windows. And the proposed side elevation showing the railings to be set back from the front elevation. And the proposed roof plan showing the terrace. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? I just had one about the overlooking element from the rear of the terrace, where it's not set back. I appreciate there are windows at the back of the property. With the extra height, does it provide any new overlooking sort of angles into the properties opposite?
So probably this elevation might be the most helpful one. So as a chairman pointed out, there's no setback from the back, but given the parapet wall and the railings, it will be quite difficult to look down. However, there will be some additional overlooking, but given the other terraces, in our opinion, there was no additional harm being overlooked already quite significantly from those properties at the rear.
Okay. Colleagues, any other questions? No? We'll proceed to a vote. The recommendation is to grant. Can I see all those in favour? So that's unanimous. So planning permission is granted. That brings an end to tonight's proceedings. Thank you all very much.